All right, so now we have a better understanding of the role that the oscillator plays in synthesis. We're going to generate a sound using some sort of waveform. The type of waveform that we use determines the sound that's being generated. So let's look at some of the other options when it comes to the oscillators available in Polygrid. I'm going to go over here where my sine oscillator is, and I have a few different options if I want to replace this. What I did before, I right-clicked on this, and then I was able to replace it with one of the oscillators down here. I also have the option of going up to the top, and there's an oscillator category, and I have various oscillators here that I can use to replace this one. Now, I just want to focus on the sounds that these oscillators can generate and why you might want to choose one over the other. With the sine wave, which is already here, all right, we can hear there's not a lot of upper harmonics. It's not very bright. So what would you use this type of sound for? Sine waves are often used for deep sub-bass type sounds, because if you play this at a very low frequency, we go down a couple octaves, you generate a nice, pure, bass-heavy tone that's not too bright, and it's going to be very effective layered under certain things. If you're a fan of the 808 kick drum, anyone who listens to hip-hop or trap or any sort of electronic music, surely you've heard the sound before. And that's essentially just a sine wave with a certain volume envelope, a little bit of a pitch envelope too. But ultimately, the tone of an 808 kick drum is essentially a sine wave. So if you want that deep, clean, clear bass, this is a good choice. On the flip side, the sine wave is also good if you want something that's more like an electric piano, almost something closer to like a Fender Rhodes type sound. If you add some vibrato, it could be very effective. So going up a couple octaves, a little bit more. Aha. So with the proper volume envelope, maybe with a little bit of delay or reverb, this could be very effective for more of a bellish or electric piano type sound. Now, if I switch this out for something with a bit more bite, we have a sine wave. We saw the triangle. Let's go ahead and go with the pulse. When we look at pulse, sometimes this can be referred to as a square waveform. You might hear it referred to as a rectangle as well, depending on what the pulse width is set to. But we'll just say pulse because this allows us to talk about the pulse width. So we see here, this is not something that's smoothly going up and down. This is not a triangle or anything like that. It's literally one pulse going up and then another pulse going down, and it just continuously does that. It's almost like an on-off message, all right? If I play this sound, it's going to be much brighter than the sine wave. It's quite bright, actually. I should probably turn my headphones down. Let's go down a couple octaves. All right, so this is a brighter sound. It's more harmonically rich. As I play this, we see in the spectrum analyzer, quite a bit of high frequency content being added there. Now, I like to use a pulse synth, usually for synth leads. If I want to have a bass line that's layered on top of a sine wave, I could use the sine wave for the sub bass component and then use this pulse maybe an octave above it to give me something a bit more audible, but still occupying more of a low bass or deep synth lead type sound. So it just depends on what you're going for. What's really cool about the pulse width parameter here, though, is that we can adjust the distance between the high and low pulses, which can change the sound in some interesting ways. So another big component of synthesis is modulation, changing things over time. So keep in mind, all these different parameters we have here can be modulated, which will add more character to the sound. So that's a square or a pulse. So we've seen sine, we've seen triangle, we've seen pulse. Another very common waveform is the sawtooth. Now, when I play with the triangle, we were able to adjust the shape to make it look a bit more like a sawtooth. Now we have a proper sawtooth, and we can see we start at a low rate here, and we go up to the top, and then it immediately drops back down. A sawtooth is the most harmonically rich out of all the waveforms that we've just seen, which ultimately means it's going to be very bright. And again, by altering the shape, we can change the sonic characteristics, change the timbre. Now, for a sound this bright, obviously this is going to be useful for something that's not intended to be too subdued. For synth leads, more aggressive type sounds, this can be very useful. But also remember, we discussed a subtractive synth initially. With waveforms that are very bright like this, running them through a filter is a great way to remove or control the actual sounds that we want to hear. So with that said, let's actually start to create something that looks a little bit closer to the polysynth that we started with, and then this will all start to make a bit more sense.